We've stood at the front lines of law, leadership, and public service. Attorney Jimeno, sharp, steady, a lawyer, an educator, turns complex issues into clear insight. Attorney Toledo, seasoned, fearless, a strategist and communicator whose voice has shaped public understanding of law and governance. Together, they make the law accessible, connecting principles with real-life questions, confronting the issues that define our nation. This is ABOGADO.
Good evening, welcome to ABOGADO, where we examine the law behind the issues that matter to Filipinos. I'm Attorney Toledo.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. 10 years ago, the Philippines secured a landmark legal victory. But a ruling and its real-world effects are not always the same. This is the issue at the heart of tonight's discussion.
In 2016, an international tribunal rejected sweeping historic claims and affirmed Philippines' rights within its exclusive economic zone. The ruling showed that international law can stand above size and military power. But what does it take to turn recognition into reality? Can a country defend what is legally its own without pushing the region toward conflict? And how long can a victory remain meaningful if conditions underwater refuse to change? Tonight, we ask, how can the Philippines enforce its arbitral victory?
With us tonight is Attorney Romel Bagares, the Vice Chair of the Department of International Law of the Philippine Judicial Academy. He is also a professor of Public International Law at the Lyceum Philippines University College of Law.
Also with us is Attorney Jose Anselmo Joe Cadiz, former Solicitor General of the Philippines and founding partner of Cadiz, Tabayoyong, Hilado, and Constantino Law Office. He previously served as National President of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, or the IBP, from 2001 to 2003, a Harvard-trained public administrator. He earned his law degree from the University of the Philippines. He also belongs to the famous class of '85. He is my classmate, and he is called the Magistrate.
Talaga, I love it. May self-promotion, no? Kasi kaklase.
Yep.
Okay.
The Magistrate. Yeah.
And gentlemen, here's tonight's flow. We'll have brief opening statements, 2 subtopics with open discussions, then final reflections.
10 years ago, the Philippines won a landmark ruling rejecting the 9-dash line and upholding its sovereign rights. But China refused to comply, and incidents at sea continued. Without enforcement, even a legal victory risked becoming symbolic. Now, Attorney Romel, a decade later, is the Arbitral Award's force intact? And is it time, and is time on the side of the Philippines? You have 2 minutes on this.
Definitely. You know, the Arbitral Award is its own enforcement mechanism. And no one can erase it. It's binding, it's final, it's binding on China, it's binding on the Philippines. And as far as I know, you look at the records 10 years later, no self-respecting state has actually continued to follow what China has been saying with respect to the 9-dash line. It's been erased. Even its allies hesitate to talk about the 9-dash line claim. Basically, the 9-dash line claim is history as far as I am concerned.
Okay, thank you so much, Attorney Romel. Attorney Joe, has a decade without compliance taught Filipinos that arbitration wins headlines, not seas?
Well,
you have 2 minutes.
That is the China line, actually. Because when countries in the international community recognize this arbitral award, then you have this pressure on China, not yet in effect. In other words, China has consistently defied the arbitration award. But down the road, I'm confident that this arbitration award will be implemented and executed.
Thank you so much, attorneys. When we come back, the foundational question, a ruling that no state enforces and one party ignores, is it still binding law? Stay with us. This is Abogado. Welcome back to Abogado. Tonight's question: 10 years after the Arbitral Award, how can the Philippines enforce its victory? Our guests are Attorney Romel Bagares and former Solicitor General Joe Cadiz.
The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, makes the award final and binding despite China's non-participation. But enforcement still depends on compliance, reputation, and reciprocity, all of which China has tested for a decade now.
Attorney Romel, does the award bind China today as fully as it did the day it was handed down? And can constant violation that has been left unanswered long enough ever ripen into an accepted fact?
Well, first, it remains binding, no doubt about it. The court, in fact, had a long section discussing its jurisdiction. It had to satisfy itself that it had jurisdiction. And it said that there's no question, it has jurisdiction, and China is going to be bound by the Arbitral Award. Now, as to your second question, I believe that under international law, that is binding, and that with respect to the holdings of the court, China is bound by those holdings. Now, the only problem is if the Philippines itself actually contradicts what the award says, because that would also impact on what China will be saying about the award, because it will say that we are contradicting the award that we said we had won 10 years ago.
So ignoring the award doesn't necessarily change anything?
It does not change anything because, as you know, in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, the provisions there say that even if a party does not participate, given the nature of the arbitration and the applicable law, it will be bound even if it did not participate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you very much, Attorney Romel. Now, Panyero, Magistrate.
Counsel.
Beyond clarifying legal rights, what has the award actually changed in state conduct, diplomacy, and international law over the past decade?
Well, China is more careful now as compared to some years ago. If you remember, some years ago, China rammed our boats and left our fishermen on the seas. Now they don't do that anymore. There is a recognition by so many countries that this arbitration award binds China. And China, as a member of the international community, it is trying to sell itself, would not be going against in a very forceful way to ignore this arbitral award. This arbitral award, this arbitration case started during the time of President Aquino.
Yes.
I made the spade work because I was the first Solicitor General of President Aquino. It has gone through 4 Solicitor Generals, and after the term of the President, when this was decided in July 2016, there was a new President already. So it took a long time. And the enforcement of this arbitration award will also take some time. But it will happen. As I said earlier, it will happen. China is not as aggressive anymore. A few days ago, there was a speech by the ambassador in his house for a joint exploration of the China Sea. And that is what we have to guard against, because if we agree to that, we are basically abandoning our win in the arbitration case. Now, speaking about enforcement, there is a convention on recognition on enforcement of foreign arbitral awards. China is a state party, however, it has written some reservations, like, as you said, reciprocity.
Yes.
And it is only on commercial awards. So they made this an exception.
Okay. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll now open the floor for an open discussion. And I'd like to pick up from what Solgen Kalida said when you talked about enforcement. So who will enforce? Okay, given that China excluded non-commercial doon sa enforcement of arbitral awards, kung gusto nating ipa-enforce yung ruling that was obtained 10 years ago, and we don't have the military might to do it, can other countries enforce on our behalf?
With all due respect to former Solgen Kalida, he's a friend, no? But international law does not really depend on armed might. It is basically based on consent and permission. Now, but where does a good Navy or Coast Guard come in? Because when your fishermen are prohibited from fishing in our own seas, you have to have a good Coast Guard to be able to guard our fishermen. Now, as you know, we have very good relationship with Japan, and they are giving us 5 destroyer ships recently retired. It's the same class of ships that they are using now, but a little bit upgraded. We have 10 Coast Guard ships from South Korea, and there are 10 more coming. So we are moving towards having a military might, maybe not to match China, but enough to be able to resist the harassment made by the Chinese Coast Guard.
So Solgen, no? If I may call you Solgen, aside from magistrate.
A long time ago.
Yes. You mentioned, and of course, Attorney Romel, you can also answer and respond to this. You mentioned something very important, and that is about the potential joint exploration. Because there has been move even during the time of President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo. In fact, there was a joint seismic study, which eventually the Supreme Court declared unconstitutional. But even during the time of Duterte, and even at the present, there is still, we are still looking at the possibility of actually entering into a joint exploration agreement for as long as it does not violate the Philippines Constitution. In other words, are you totally against a joint exploration per se, or would you be amenable to a joint exploration and really find out what's underneath the, in this case, Service Contract 72 in the Reed Bank area, and really find out what are the resources there? Because it's possible that there's none. So what's there to quibble about, di ba? So are you totally against it because it goes against the arbitral award? Is it really a surrender of our winning the arbitral award by merely entering into a potential joint venture agreement for as long as it does not violate the Constitution?
We have to see the fine line, Counsel. We have to see the fine line because I'm quite concerned that China, I really don't trust China here. But if we can bind them on an agreement which is clear, unequivocal, and easy to interpret, and it does not violate the Constitution and the arbitral award, we can have a discussion on that. But, you know, after the joint study, we go now, if there's something there,
Yes.
we go down to exploration.
Yes.
Who has the means? China. Who can measure what's there? China. So that's kind of slippery slope for me.
But Attorney Romel, do you agree with that? Are we giving up our sovereignty? Kasi yung argument naman ng iba, this is where we can have what they call joint diplomatic cooperation.
Well, Attorney mentioned Reed Bank. And the arbitral award actually said the Reed Bank belongs to or falls within our exclusive economic zone.
It's where we exercise sovereign rights.
And exactly, how do you implement the arbitral award? By actually being a party that exercises sovereign rights.
Yes.
And so if we actually work out in an agreement following the arbitral award, that would actually be a way to enforce the arbitral award that says that we have exclusive sovereign rights over the reed bank with respect to the oil and gas there. And so, going to the argument of Good Solicitor General, it's correct that we need to look at the fine print. Because we do have the legal framework for that, with PD 87, the Constitution. What people don't understand is, of course, the argument about the constitutional reach. What is territory, what is not? You know, the exclusive economic zone is not territory. Does the Constitution apply to that area? So the legal regime will necessarily be the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea.
Siguro nga kailangan natin explain, partner, sa ating mga tagapakinig natin kababayan, na yung tinatawag nating sovereign rights, iba yun sa sovereignty. Pero siguro baka ibang episode pa yan. No? Iba yung sovereignty. Sovereignty is you can enforce your law, especially into your territory. In this case, the 12 nautical mile territorial waters.
That's correct.
But you have to respect the right of innocent passage, di ba? But in sovereign rights, when it concerns the continental shelf and the exclusive economic zone, you can actually explore the natural, whatever the natural, the God-given resources that are there. Sayang naman pag di magamit, especially because we need so much energy, so much minerals, and all
And
that.
I think the area you're talking about, yan yung potentially merong deposits of natural gas or
Very big
that would
deposit
help
of
us
natural
with
gas.
our power, electricity supply.
Exactly. And we all know that Malampaya is slowly
Getting depleted.
Yes, it's a lifespan. And everything is finite. So this is an opportunity. That's why maybe I just like to add to what my friend Solicitor Cadiz said. It's not only just China who will have the wherewithal or the capability to actually explore. We can always secure the expertise as well, the financial muscle of others, private entities to help out. What I'm just trying to drive at is, kailangan siguro talaga, pag-usapan talaga natin mabuti, partner. Sayang maraming kayamanan sa ilalim. Pag walang gagamit dyan, walang gagalaw, walang magbe-benefit. Nangangailangan ang taong bayan, lalo na mga Pilipino, mas kailangan natin yan kaysa China.
But to Soljan Joe's point, sabi niya kasi wala tayong capability to find out what's there, to measure what's there. Is it possible, to both gentlemen here, Attorney Romel as well, kung kumuha tayo ng cooperation from another country that would have that capacity?
Well, alam po ninyo, we have examples. We have models where countries who actually fight over the same area have entered into a similar cooperation agreement. Like Japan and Korea, you know, they're also at loggerheads over an important area in the eastern part of Asia, and yet they have a cooperation agreement on oil and gas, and the terms are well defined. So it's not unheard of to have countries that have disputes over territory or over maritime resources who actually have entered into a model agreement, and we can look to them for examples, for guidance. And of course, I mean, Japan has invested heavily now in our own Navy. They're giving us 5 destroyer escorts. It's going to be turned over to us in the next 2 years.
Yes.
I mean, it's not. It's quite a good idea actually to have Japan and Korea enter into an agreement with us because they have the experience with respect to oil and gas exploration. And Korea, of course, we have been buying arms from South Korea as well. So we have good diplomatic relations with these two countries.
So
Thank you so much.
Siguro, partner, before we move on to the other topics, no, kailangan siguro talaga, and I would like your opinion on this, both gentlemen. Nandiyan ang arbitral award, and that's really a victory, regardless of whether or not China recognizes it. We all know now that several countries have recognized, even those we thought that will not recognize. Most of the European Union recognizes it. Even ASEAN, who normally is quiet, actually recognizes it without actually being so being vocal about it. So that's a good sign, di ba? Na talagang these past 10 years nagmo-move na because of that arbitral award. Pero siguro sa tingin nyo ba, do you think it should be the priority of the Philippines to actually convince its ASEAN neighbors to be more vocal about their stance and about the arbitral award, to really support the arbitral award and to really call on China to make sure that they follow the arbitral award? Because right now, our ASEAN neighbors are quite quiet about that.
Maganda yan, no? But all of these countries have their own self-interest also. China has footprints in so many ASEAN countries, Laos, Burma.
Vietnam as well.
Vietnam is almost at par with China in terms of military strength. Indonesia. But I think because they see China, hindi nila masabi, but I think China is a threat to most of them. There will be a movement, gathering movement, momentum to really be vocal about this, as you said, Council. They will be vocal about this. Mapunta na ako dun sa cooperation. There is another cooperation on oil exploration between the United Kingdom and the Netherlands in the North Atlantic.
Yes.
So that is a model also, because they had a dispute which they also brought before the UNCLOS. But these are two European countries who have been friendly for a long time, except for football. No? Pagkalaban sila sa football. But, I think the civilized world will eventually prevail and say, China, you are wrong. China, you have to recognize this. Yung 9-dash line ninyo where you want to turn the whole South China Sea into its own lake, I think that's preposterous. Nobody buys that.
Thank you so much, attorneys. Up next, the enforcement menu. A second case, a UN vote, allied patrols, laws passed at home. Which instrument fits a country with law on its side and limited leverage? This is Abogado.
Welcome back and thanks for joining us. You're still watching Abogado. Now, enforcing the award may require several paths. Another, arbitration, a UN resolution, joint patrols with allies, or stronger domestic laws.
Attorney Romel, each option has risks and limits. Which is the best path forward? And which should the Philippines avoid?
Okay, number one, I think what's needed really for the Philippines is a follow through to consolidate our title over the South China or the Spratlys, the Calayan Island Group, for instance, because the Arbitral Award actually split that up into rocks that only generate the territorial sea. We have a Philippine Maritime Zones Act. Well, we need to build on it and express now and identify the islands and draw baselines around the islands as shoring up of our sovereignty claims. No? So the Arbitral Award actually provided us with the mechanism, with the framework for that. And we have not done that yet. We have not submitted hydrographic maps to the UN as required by UNCLOS to follow what the Arbitral Award said, that only have rocks there that generate territorial sea. And the old Calayan Island Group law, PD 1596, did not name anything there. It just said every feature inside our box. That's ours. Now, that's no longer the case under the Arbitral Award. So we need to consolidate title. We need to do that. We have the law, but we need to specify, to identify, specify, and then draw baselines. And secondly, actually, the UNCLOS's mechanisms. If there is a failure to comply, there are mechanisms to go back to the arbitral court. This is not a second case because you cannot relitigate what has been already litigated.
So yung arbitration option that's off the table?
No, that's already it's already final and binding, right? The court said, well, you only have rocks there, no exclusive economic zone overlaps, and so that's final and binding. What you can do next is actually to ask the arbitral court to monitor the compliance by China. So that's another way actually of extending further the legal win we've had, because that will force China to justify itself.
Or file another case, but this time on destruction of the environment.
Well, that's correct.
That's a different
so based
case
on
naman.
the holding of the court that there was destruction, there was damage.
Yes.
And so the next step would be to file for a damage suit actually against China.
Good points you raised there, Attorney Romel, and I'm glad, partner, no, that he brought to the attention of our viewers yung tinatawag na maritime-based law na pinasa. If I'm not mistaken, si Senator Tolentino, and also the very important archipelagic law,
Doctrine.
which
Two laws,
actually,
yes.
these two laws are the domestic laws that we need to strengthen
Yeah.
the arbitral award. Now, Magistrate, now ang tanong ko naman sa iyo, and I think you touched on this when Attorney Karen asked you earlier. What if we invite the powerful navies, which we've been doing? No, we've been having joint patrols with the different countries, with Australia, with Japan, with Korea, if I'm not mistaken. What if we bring them in and provide more? Of course, the United States, and this will give more muscle, no, military muscle. Will this actually be a boon to our legal victory? Will this be, or just be another great power contest?
Actually, it's not a power contest between China and the West. No. At the end of the day, it is the self-interest of the Philippines which is at stake. But going to the patrols, if you remember, France sent its aircraft carrier here. It has only one aircraft carrier, but it brought the aircraft carrier to the South China Sea. India also has done patrols, the United Kingdom. Now, that is okay, but they cannot be here forever. They cannot, like, stay here for months. They also need their own navies to protect their own countries. So that is why I go back to my old point that these destroyers that are being given to us by Japan, missile-capable destroyers, will be a very big boost to us. And aside from the 10 Coast Guard ships that we have brought from Korea, another 10 Coast Guard ships are being built. So the muscle will already be there. And when our Coast Guard ship comes near the Chinese Coast Guard ship, it's the Chinese Coast Guard ship which veers away from our own ships when they intrude into our exclusive economic zone. So power is also important. And we have to have a powerful Navy and a powerful Coast Guard to be able to deter further Chinese aggression.
Thank you so much, Solgen, Joe, and Attorney Romel. Now we have the floor again open for discussion. And I'd like to start with a question because we have been filing diplomatic protests.
Correct.
Ano bang na-achieve nito every time we file a diplomatic protest?
Well, that's actually important because it means that we are asserting the rights that we won. Because if we keep silent, we could be estopped. You know, in international, you also have such a thing as estoppel. You are sleeping on your rights. Now, you've won an important victory in international law. You need to continue with that. You need to shore up your rights. You need to assert what you've won. If we keep silent, it means that we are simply accepting what China is saying now with respect to the South China Sea. So diplomatic protests, they're part of the whole legal mechanism, the legal strategy that we need to continue as a state.
Now, to both of you, both gentlemen, partner, di ba? Ito, very important to kasi nakikita natin, no, that the China actually wields so much power as far as information is concerned. Kaya nga, ang tinatawag nating cognitive defense, no? Because we have studied that war are not just won by bullets, missiles, ships, and planes. Wars are won through the minds of the people. When you actually take away from the people their beliefs in their own nation, in the belief of their own, the stand of their own government, they already question whether or not, because there are so many people already actually saying, why are we fighting China over this? Although the latest survey showed that 66% of Filipinos, partner, Octa says, supports President BBM's assertive stance on the West Philippine Sea. But still, can you imagine? Why not 80? Why not 90? So there is a strong, maybe it's still a minority, but still a big minority who actually thinks that, no, we cannot totally just say China does not also own part of that. In fact, as of late, they're already saying, there's a Chinese scholar that says that Batanes is already part
Palawan also.
of China.
Palaki na ng
Diba?
palaki.
Palaki ng palaki. So, don't you think that there must be stronger effort on the part of the government as well as the private sector to fight this kind of war, which is called cognitive warfare?
I agree, Counsel. In China, they teach 9-dash line as early as kindergarten. Kaya paglaki nila, pag nagkaroon na sila ng sariling pag-iisip, they are very aggressive. That is ours. Tinurusak nila from grade school. I think that is where we should start. We should also teach our children in the elementary grades about the West Philippine Sea and this Arbitral Award. I think we have to shape the minds of our children. Tayo, hubog na eh. Yung talagang may malasakit sa China at meron naman talagang Pilipinong kampi pa sa China, tingin ko hindi na natin mababago yan. We have to start from the children. We have to start in school. Hubugin natin sila na atin ito. West Philippine Sea is ours. The exclusive economic zone is ours. Diba? Scarborough Shoal is ours. So dapat ituro natin yan. Itinuturo sa China. Yung 9-dash line, that is being taught in the elementary school in China.
Well, in terms of support from the global community, would a UN resolution add pressure?
Well, of course, it's a political maneuver at the UN. You know, the UN General Assembly is not just one state, but about 198 now. And China, of course, remains a big power broker. They have been, in the absence of the US, they're the ones now that's funding many UN programs, right? So that has to be carefully crafted. As I said, I think we need to develop a narrative, what we want. Because actually, if you look at the UN, that Arbitral Award, one of the reasons used by the court there to recognize our rights is that it was China itself that said third world states have entitlements to their exclusive economic zone. It was China who said that in the UN Convention.
All the developing countries were actually, when the UNCLOS was being framed, partner, all the developing countries were actually pushing for that,
Yes.
The rights of coastal states. That's why it seems quite confusing, no? Why suddenly China's position is quite different?
Because it's no longer a third world state. It's now a first world power. And so the messaging actually is really important to say that China is actually contradicting itself here. It recognized that third world states need to have the resources in the exclusive economic zone because they need to be economically independent to develop themselves. Now, from the 80s, the UNCLOS third UNCLOS conference, and to date, where are we with respect to the fishing resources in the exclusive economic zone? And that's really important. The messaging that we're sending out to the world, because it's a special class of rights. It's international erga omnes and jus cogens norms. They bind the international community. We have not been speaking in those terms, so we have to develop that narrative. That this is actually a special, extraordinary right under international law that the international community needs to recognize.
But when it comes to elaborating that and developing that narrative, saan dapat manggaling? We have, yung sinabi ni Soljan Joe, simulan sa bata pa lang, I think we can incorporate that in our education system. But what if it's something like that type of messaging?
Well, you know, China has given also gives us some points. We need to harness our intellectual capabilities. So we need to develop our own scholarship, you know, with more intentional help from the government. Because I think that's what we don't have right now. Other European states, they have a council of international experts with their own academic experts that are actually actively engaged by the state. Like the Netherlands, they have an academic council. We don't have that right now in the DFA. You know, China graduates passes into the bar about 90,000 lawyers every year. If you just have 10% of that as international experts, where are we? We don't have enough international experts in the Philippines. I can count with the number of fingers our PhDs in the law of the sea. So we need to develop the intellectual capital for that. The government has to be intentional Our DFA needs to be stocked with PhDs in the law of the sea. Vietnam has an academy of international law that produces hundreds of PhDs in the law of the sea every year.
So I thought partner,
Naiwanan
it was
na pala
only
tayo doon.
it's only the Philippines na marami abogado. Marami din pala sa China.
Marami. Mas marami.
90,000 a year.
Yeah.
Past the bar,
90,000.
yes.
It's a-
Imagine.
a portion of as compared to the a percentage of the look at
Population.
demographic, the
Yeah.
population. I always thought that the Philippines was number one because that's why we're so litigious. but maybe there's something that siguro marinig ng ating mga kababayan, no? Kasi marami nagsasabi China is militarily and economically powerful. The number, they already overtook Japan, and now they're the second largest economy. And in terms of military might, we can see that they're really gaining ground, especially in the field of cyber warfare and AI. Pero siguro kailangan natin siguro i-temper yan at sabihin sa mga ating tagapakinig na when it comes to the international court, for example, di ba, or arbitral decisions, we all know that even powerful countries like the United States natalo. Like in the case of Nicaragua versus United States, partner,
Yes.
di ba? In the case of Nicaragua versus United States, Nicaragua won.
Yeah.
Who would think that Nicaragua can win in the world court?
Yeah, actually, the arbitral award is our Nicaragua. It's actually the new Nicaragua because of the wide-ranging nature of the rulings there. And mind you, in Nicaragua, the the U.S. resisted for a time.
Yes.
But eventually, it agreed to pay up.
It paid up. Yeah. They because of the pressure. This is yun ang gusto natin gayahin, partner. Yan yung template.
Incidentally, our lawyer who won this UNCLOS case was the lawyer for Ortega, for Nicaragua.
Yes, that's
at the
actually
time.
Ian Brownlee.
Yes.
He was a better Ortega
So
at the time.
you're talking about a lawyer that worked with the
Brownlee.
Philippine legal team.
The law
Tama ba?
office, because Ian Brownlee was the lawyer. He was from the law office that also represented us in the Arbitral Award. So you actually have these two parallel cases that are really important in the field of international law. The Nicaragua case and then the South China Sea
And you
Arbitral
have
Award.
the same
This
law firm
Same
behind
law
it.
firm.
This lawyer is a
interesting.
lawyer
Yes.
for the underdog states.
Yes.
Yeah.
he was just too happy
what's his
to-
nationality?
American. He's
American.
Yes.
Interesting. Oh, against the
Yeah.
U.S. partner.
Yes,
That's
yes.
that's very good to hear.
That
di ba?
was the arms shipment of Oliver North, the
To the
National
Contras.
Security Advisor of President Reagan at the time.
To the Contras. They were
Yeah.
arming. They were arming the
Yeah.
Contras. That was a great.
It was a low-intensity conflict
Yes.
perpetrated by the U.S. in Nicaragua.
But interesting, now Ortega has delisted the lawyers. It's not the Supreme Court of Nicaragua. It is him who delisted the lawyers,
So
took out
basically,
their licenses. Nag-iba na siya.
parang tinanggalan niya ng bar. Parang dinisbar niya.
Yes, yes.
Interesting, ah. But I think, to Attorney Romel's point, we should continue to build that
Correct.
intellectual capital
Yes.
so that we would have the capacity to continue to defend our sovereignty.
Hanggang meron tayong PICAS, di ba? Philippine Center for Advanced Study. That was created by President Marcos Sr. But you know, its relevance faded over time. I think that is something that we can start with. If you go to PICAS building now, you cannot recognize it anymore. It is run down.
Wala nang, it's a defunct agency. Wala na bang nagli-lead? Wala nang tao doon?
Well, you know, pag nakita mo yung building, sasabihin mo, condemned building na yan. Sayang. So I think I agree that our intellectual capacity must be expanded as far as international law is concerned.
Thank you again so much, attorneys. After the break, we'll go to closing reflections on our central question. 10 years after the Arbitral Award, how can the Philippines enforce its victory? This is Abogado.
Welcome back to Abogado. Tonight, we examine the gap between winning a legal case and enforcing it at sea.
The award may be permanent, but continued defiance has consequences. We now turn to closing thoughts. Attorney Romel, your final word.
I think for us, the Philippines, we really need to realize what we've won. It's not just a Philippine win, actually. It's a win for all states that need the maritime resources as coastal states. It's a win that will reverberate for third world states, states that continue to suffer from the effects of colonization. We were colonized, but in the UNCLOS conferences, as a state, one of the leading states that actually campaigned for the recognition by the colonizers that we should be entitled to our seas. Yes. And that's what we won at the arbitral case against China.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Attorney Romel. Sol Gen Joe, your closing reflections.
Well, alam mo, I feel that China is not really a stable country. Wala silang succession. So I think down the road, just like the former USSR before, when it disintegrated, and even Gorbachev allowed it, all its satellite countries became free. All the Soviet republics became free. What remained was Russia. I think this will happen to China. Eventually, they will have to abandon this because the successor to Xi Jinping may have a different mindset. And Xi Jinping is getting old. He will not stay forever. And that is my hope. The new leadership of China will realize that it has to be a member of the civilized world. It cannot bamboozle small countries like the Philippines and the other ASEAN countries. Of course, our military might must get stronger. Our diplomats must be more aggressive. When Gibo Teodoro was quote-unquote banned from entering China, I had hoped that our DFA would have spoken and summoned the Chinese ambassador. It was not done. So I hope we can be more assertive. Tell the ambassador that's not the right thing to do. It's not going to war with China, but telling him that this thing that you did with our Secretary of Defense is wrong. He's a UP Law alumnus also. Valedictorian, right?
What about the president going directly to discuss this with the Chinese president? Would that help?
Well, I think it should be the level initially among the foreign secretaries. But 2 days ago, the president spoke about this, and he was supporting Secretary Teodoro.
Yeah.
Our thanks again to Attorney Romel Bagares and former Solicitor General Joe Cadiz for measuring with clear eyes what a decade of defiance has and has not taken from us.
Indeed, partner. It's really good to know also that the case, the Arbitral Award that we won, is now the new Nicaragua-US template, so to speak. And hopefully it will achieve the same thing that was achieved in that particular case. So 10 years on, the award has proven one thing beyond argument. The law can name what is ours. Whether the law can keep it is the work of the decade ahead.
And that work belongs to more than diplomats and admirals. It belongs to every Filipino who refused to let a right fade for lack of use. This is Abogado. Good night.